our brain and reality. Do we see things clearly as they really are? Three things we should remember when talking about how the brain works. First, inputs to our feelings and emotions when we're three. Now our brain gives a picture of how to survive best, and not particularly of reality as it really is. It's designed to help our survival and get on. The way parents see things is handed on to the children. And babies have many nerve cells waiting for connections to the pathway, and connections come through their relationships, especially with the mother. The first few months and probably years of life, the mother is the most important person touching and being with that baby and sharing its feelings and thoughts and emotions. The epigenetic characteristics to allow the genes to be expressed are in the cells next to the DNA, are affected by chemicals, and the baby's chemicals follow the mother's, giving similar characteristics. Resilience in a baby is built in the changing relationship between it and the mother. There's not always a peaceful and straightforward relationship between the mother and the baby. There are ups and downs. Mothers get tired and upset, the baby crying, this type of thing. And it's an average of a third of the time that there are tears and ruptures in a relationship. And this makes the baby strong and able to carry on without having all the attention of the mother and other people all the time. There's also another brain other than the one in our head, which affects what happens to us. It's called the belly brain, our enteric nervous system. And there are some 100 million neurons from the esophagus down to the anus, which relation to digestion and to the microbiome. The microbiome is all the germs, bacteria, viruses, fungus in the gut. The elementary epigenetics reflects the mothers, and only a 70% developed at birth. But this changes at birth because the baby gets the microbe from the vaginal secretions at birth and during birth. And the bacteria, fungi, and viruses, our microbe, that make up our body's microflora, outnumber our body cells by 10 to 1. So there's an awful lot of bacteria, fungi, and viruses inside us, inside our body. And this gut, enteric brain, belly brain, affects our immune system, affects our moods, affects how we feel. And the basis of all this is the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve rises from the brain, runs down to supply and control our throat, larynx, bronchi, air tubes, lungs, heart, esophagus, and all along the gut, the stomach, intestine, and colon. The vagus nerve contains over 100 trillion, that's 1,000 million neurons, which is more than the spinal cord and all the peripheral nerves put together. Now our gut sends far more information to our brains than the brain sends back to the gut. There is an interconnected relationship between the mind, the brain, and the body via this enteric nervous system and the vagus nerve. And being compassionate and kind activates this nerve and makes the body calm and leads to good health. And when you're active and stressed, the opposite happens. So this is called the parasympathetic nervous system, or the vagus nerve, and you can see it goes down to the air tubes, the heart, the lungs, the stomach and all the gut, the liver, the spleen and the kidneys. Now, in reality, in the way we survive in nature, the brain sticks to negativities more strongly than to positive thoughts. In the past, this assisted our survival in nature. This evolved for satisfaction, safety, and connection. So we'd run away from things quickly when they looked negative to us and survive in the bush. Unfortunately, negative experiences tend to last longer in our brains because of this. So we must be careful not to reinforce them and to hardwire them, because they cause us unhappiness and worry. So we must learn to let them go. And negative experiences are quickly transferred to emotions. So we must cultivate positive ones and take in good ones to get rid of these negative ones. When we have positive experiences, we should enrich these feelings and keep them longer inside ourselves so they can become stronger. Now in the brain there's a network of interconnection between nerve cells called the default network. And this is huge in our brain. And it comes into action, into play, when our brain is not doing a specific task. You can just think, when you're not doing particular something, you start dreaming and thinking of everything. And it allows rumination, storylines, worry and emotions. It makes up stories and worst case scenarios. We always think that terrible things could happen because of our negative bias in our brain. And it can cause us many worries and unhappiness. When we ask people about moral judgments about other people, it switches on this network very quickly. In other words, when we're thinking of what terrible things other people are doing, we wouldn't do that sort of thing. This is our default network running through us. The default network is affected in Alzheimer's, dementia, when people lose memory and place and relationships, particularly when they're getting older. Depression, anxiety, trauma, change of this thought, enlarge the connections in this network. So the network is very important of making us how we feel, good or bad, because it switches on much of the time. And as you can see, it's coloured in green in this picture, that is large and spreads across much of the brain. Whereas the action or control network when we're doing something is what happens in red. And people with depression find it hard to leave the default mode and do tasks. In depression, other parts of the brain come to the default network and hijack the feelings to disengage and cause inhibition and motivation to withdraw, stay by themselves and become lonely. And people suffering from chronic pain and anxiety can have difficulty in shutting down this default network, because they start thinking, why do I have this? Why me? Why am I like this? And all these questions make them get stuck in this default network. And we can change this default network state by using mindfulness meditation to lessen thinking about oneself and becoming aware of the senses of reality. Just when your mindfulness meditation, you concentrate on what's happening in the present moment by watching your breath. Just where the breath touches the inside of your nose or your chest going in and out, and just rest on that, watching carefully and not going into all these ruminations and thoughts through the default networks. You just stay there and you become aware of what's happening in reality at this present moment. Loving kindness meditation also calms the default networks. In loving kindness meditation, you're just giving out thoughts of happiness, love and compassion to all beings everywhere, in all directions. The more these meditation practices are done, the more the default network is calmed and suffering is reduced. There have been many trials, scientific trials on this, and this is found to be true. If we can keep our mind in the present moment instead of the default mode, we get more happiness and better health. Staying in the default mode and trying to resolve stress does not work, and we get stuck in the mode. So when we're ruminating and thinking in our default network and trying to slow down the stress which has come from outside in that time, just gets worse because we go round and round in circles and start thinking, oh, that shouldn't have happened to me. Then we let it go for a while. Then it comes back, oh, it shouldn't have really happened to me. It goes on and that, getting worse and worse. So we must practice gaining attention and staying in the present moment to change the habit of falling into the thought network. So we must practice being mindful of our breath and watching what's happening in the present moment. And mindful meditation allows assessments and discernments of what you are thinking to be made, so wise and beneficial decisions can be made. Focused attention on the breath enhances the cortex planning capacity, focuses on cognitive functions, and stops distractions. Without mindful awareness of senses, we just go into the thought network. The more you practice calming the thought network, the more you reduce suffering and happiness. The more you practice loving kindness meditation, the more calm sees the thought network. The thought mode can cause pain to be felt more strongly and increases in intensity. Things get worse. Just feel, oh, why is this happening? Oh, it feels terrible. And goes and grows and grows. When Zen meditators had pain and practiced the meditation, the pain areas in the brain, when they did MRI scans, showed more activations, but less into the thought network. So those green parts of the brain got less, and the red part increased. And the pain and the thought systems were decoupled. So the pain problem areas in the brain didn't react straight with the thought network, and the thought network didn't follow the pain areas in the brain. And this resulted in a higher pain threshold and less suffering. So the person had the pain, but he didn't think about it so much and had much less suffering. So we practice just being peaceful, watching what's happening in the present moment. Our emotional system is a seeking system, moving our attention out into the world. And the brain links up with other brains in part through mirror neurons. These are areas in our brain which reflect what other people are thinking when we look at their faces, their eyes, and hear their talk. And all the systems are changed by who we encounter and can be shaped by who we encounter today. We're utterly interdependent. In other words, we're not separated from other people, but we are interdependent, and our relationships are very important in determining how our brains react and how our brain's welfare is going. Streams of implicit memories are formed before we start having explicit ones, when we're around 2 years old. And these are our foundations of our lives and how we expect to see the world. Our relationships with our mothers and our family, when we're under 2 years old, are not specific memories, but they're implicit memories. They're there, but not related to specific events. And they're called implicit. Whereas explicit ones we have later become related to specific events. Very traumatic events later in life too can become implicit, just under the surface of the brain, not related and stuck to one event in the past. They can come up into our lives at the moment, as if they were real now, but they actually are implicit memories of the past. We remember early experiences with our bodily feelings, and we have explicit memories arising which have no apparent relation to a specific event happening now, because they're just there in the background, and they arise when we think of something, and they see as if they are present happening now, and they're not. And this happens when soldiers go out to war and they have terrible experiences, and they get what is called post-traumatic stress syndrome. And then they have a little experience causing them unhappiness, and then they go straight as if they were having this terrible stress they were happening when they're at war. That's because they have this stress and problems when they're at war formed implicit memories which hide underneath the surface of the consciousness and come to fore with any other traumatic experience. They're not like explicit memories, they come only with that memory of what happened in the past. We do not have to think and plan before we act. This can make us act just automatically, and we act under the influence of past experiences and do not realize that they are in this implicit memory. This affects the idea of who we are and who we are not. And we don't realize the underlying shame or strength or needs that we have, which come through in our implicit feelings, our implicit memories. So, what happens today is dating back to our implicit memories in the past. And many of these happened when we were young babies. So a baby's nervous system is sculptured by early experience. Parental neglect and abuse affect the child's body and senses. Good parenting gives strength to the child. Patterns of attachment the child has with a parent help structure the front of the brain, which enables soothing and regulation. With uncertain attachment, in other words, the child is not clear whether help is going to come from the parent or not, we get hyperarousal. That's more activation in the kid, which leads to defiance, acting out, and underachievement in what they're doing. So when you look at young kids or school children acting in certain ways, you've got to be able to relate back to what happened to cause these sort of reactions when they were kids, and how can we help them overcome these implicit memories coming up, causing them to act in this way. And how we were treated becomes the way we treat ourselves and accept the way we are. All this happens because our brain is changing, and that's called neuroplasticity, the way the brain changes. And this works in two ways: making of new cells and connections, and pruning the old ones and deleting the old ones. And neuroplasticity is induced by sensory stimulation, reaching the brain from outside and from inside ourselves. To shape the brain, the inputs need to be repetitive and constant. Choosing the focus of our attention is utmost important. So, to change our brain, just one thing won't change it, but we'll have it repeated. That sets up neural pathways and cause the growth of new nerve cells. So we can say we can have two wolves inside ourselves. One of hate, which causes unhappiness, and one of love, which causes happiness. And depending on which you feed every day, which determines the outcome of your life. So neuroplasticity and our routines make the roots in our brain. So we have mental activity, it can be a thought or action, creation of neural nerve structures, because neurons start to fire together, and those that fire together wire together. In other words, they connect up together. With attention, we can direct how this neural substrate is built and rebuilt. We can strengthen the pathways we want by thinking the way we want to be. The greatest change in the brain happens around birth and when we are teenagers. The frontal lobes of the brain, the most advanced part of the brain, are not fully developed until mid-20s or slightly earlier in girls than boys. These frontal areas restrain impulses from less developed parts of the brain and from hormones. There's lots of hormones circulating in teenagers around sex and these other activities. So teenagers are influenced by these basic instincts with less control possible and take more risks and dangers because they have less control because their frontal lobes of the brain which give this control are not fully developed yet. So we can't expect teenagers to be like adults because they have these different changes in their bodies and their brains. So it becomes a difficult time for them and their parents. As self-control can be difficult as the body is going through sexual changes and maturation at this time, puberty. But the control center that adults have is lacking in teenagers. So the peak growth and neuroplasticity, the changes in the brain, at birth and at this age of teenagers. But the parental hope for change and what the parents want them to do goes down because they have not got this frontal control center working yet as teenagers. And culture too, what sort of culture we grow up in, affects the way we see things. Babies are born to sort of a fishbowl, resulting in how we're taught to see things. The fishbowl being the family, and how the family gets on together, what other relationships there are, other families and other people. It's the fishbowl showing the kid what things are important in life. We have parts and different personalities which we usually do not notice and ignore, and inner voices and identity with others. So we have all these little parts made up of different really personalities inside, and we choose one at certain moments. We don't really realize we're doing this, but it will suddenly come up. Intercultural connections. It's very important. It takes away rigidity and leads to cultural richness. So when we connect with other cultures and other ideas, we get less fixed that we are right. Our culture is right. We see that others are just as right as us, and we come to understand them and see how this has developed people in a way in their thinkings, and just more understanding of other people. And we can see what's going on in another even before they know it themselves. And facial expression is very important in this. And the face has many muscles that tighten or relax and cause slight facial expression to change, which we can recognize. There are about 100 different small muscles just around the front of the face, which both the person we're looking at and we have. And our eyes notice these changes, which we don't. And this is seen by our brain and the mirror neurons. And the mirror neurons react to other facial and eye expressions, and our own face becomes reflect what the other's seen. In other words, our face takes up the same attitude in these muscles, same tensions in these muscles as the other person we're watching. So our eye movements and their eye movements are very important. And when we take on these facial expressions, we take up the same feelings and emotions as the other person has. It gives rise to our own feelings and emotions. So it's quite remarkable how we communicate subconsciously with another person and have these feelings of what they're thinking in our own mind automatically. Our feelings are automatically assessed. When we feel something, following a sensation on the skin or a thought, we immediately assess it with our memories and beliefs. So if a feeling comes up, we start assessing it with memories and belief. And these memories can just be little things. We had this kind of experience before, or met the same people, or met with people with similar characteristics. Our beliefs can be how you believe certain types of things or people behave or act. And this, of course, is our feelings to be covered with these types of thoughts. So feelings we just don't feel, or a feeling coming into our eyes or our brain or our skin, just as this feeling pure and simple, but we take it in and we assess it with what experiences we've had in our past. And this results in how we react and our state of mind. So our state of mind determines, following on from these experiences of our feelings and thoughts and beliefs, how we're going to react. If we attach to our feelings and thoughts with negativities, then our state of mind becomes negative and react in a negative way, causing problems for ourselves and others. If we react in a positive way, then our state of mind is positive and reacts accordingly. Negative mental states become associated with a default network and less advanced parts of the brain. Positive mental states can be associated with more advanced parts of the brain, the frontal cortex, where we have control thoughts. Recurring positive or negative thoughts and reactions start shaping neural connections so that we become more positive or negative respectively. So repetition causes the brain to change in that direction. Examples of negative thoughts are greed and lust, sensuality, hatred, anger, jealousy and irritability, worry, or just giving up and not trying, or uncertainty or stress, unsubstantiated fears, superstition, lack of confidence, plenty of superstitions around which we all hang on to, which are all negative. False beliefs, such that you're not interdependent with other people. So we like to think we are separate from somebody else, but as we've seen already, we are so closely connected in our relationships to others. And when you think you're interdependent, you start being uncaring, conceited, and arrogant and selfish, which are all negative thoughts. And we should watch out for such thoughts and mental states and get rid of them quickly, so they do not cause us unhappiness and suffering, and can cause us really big problems. Example of positive thoughts are loving kindness, sending it out to all beings we meet, compassion to all beings, being happy with successes and of others and their well-being, being peaceful and contented without showing favoritism, and having inner strength to do good. Reacting with positive thoughts and mental states results in happiness and well-beings. And we make pathways in the brain when we repeat these positive reactions. Positive thoughts and mental states gives us positive and happy connections in our brain. Negative, unhappy mental states gives us unhappy connections in our brain. We should try and remember that our relations with others is critical to our happiness and well-being. When we give positive thoughts, speech and actions to others, positivity comes back to us. When we give negative thoughts, speech and actions to others, negativity comes back to us, resulting in unhappiness. So we always try and do the positive things and be happy. The brain uses a lot of energy. It uses about 25% of the blood's metabolic supplies. And the higher cortical areas in front of the brain, the cerebral cortex, are relatively slow, and the last ones to have developed and to control require a lot of energy. And if there is stress, there's lack of energy reaching these areas, and the more primitive areas of the brain take over, and responses to situations become more automatic. In flight and fight reactions, that's when we're frightened, I'm going to do something quickly, energy is directed away to the muscles, away from the brain, so the cortex misses out. So this affects the ability of us to control our reactions with good thinking and sense. And 99% of the day we're generally on automatic. With practice we can lessen this, but often we are like this. In this time we're constantly assessing what is coming in with our memories. Many of our implicit memories, we don't really know they're there all the time. And there are other memories as well, and beliefs and ideas. And every moment is filled with this type of constructed material influencing what is sensed. In other words, things that come in are assessed by our beliefs and our thoughts and our memories at that time. And they change because of that. Because of this, our stories and ideas cannot be trusted as being the reality of what is actually coming in. And things are seldom as they count your breaths, see how many breaths you can take while you're focused on this point. Just watching this helps to strengthen the brain. We try and watch it for a minute or two, just relaxing, being in the present moment and watching. A good night's sleep and a good diet reduces inflammation in our body and helps the brain to stay healthy. Good exercise, strong exercise, 3 times a week at least, enables the astrocyte cells to carry more glycogen and energy to the frontal lobes and helps our memory function better. So these are all things we should do to help us not age in our brain, not become like our body, broken down as we get older. And the brain does not necessarily follow the body with aging. But if we think it will, and we get frightened that it will, then it probably will. So we've got to be strong and help it not become like that. Our immune system is more than just a protector against pathogens. Our immune system reacts to what comes into our thoughts. Symbols and language, criticism and shame could give an allergic type of reaction. We get upset. And if you're told by somebody you'll die at a certain time, you'll believe it. And you'll probably die then. People in traditions in some societies, you can point a bone at somebody, an elder in the society, saying you're going to die in 6 months' time. And they die. You can go to a doctor with diagnosis of cancer and you say, oh, you'll probably die in 6 months' time or a year's time. And if you believe that, you'll die at that time. So do not expose yourself to disease by having inaccurate and superstitious beliefs or feeling. Just be strong and don't believe these things people tell you. When we're forced out of our own environment, such as kicked out of our homes, squatter settlements, or people forcing us out in army or tsunamis or anything like this, we get our immunological system suppressed. In other words, it doesn't work well, and we get other diseases such as TB and diabetes. But when we're strong, we have honor and do good things, this is anti-inflammatory, and we don't get these types of sicknesses. So stress affects all parts of ourselves. It affects the nervous system, giving anxiety, depression, lack of sleep. Affects our immune system, giving inflammations, infecting, allergy and pain. Affects our endocrine system, affecting the thyroid, adrenal glands and sex organs. All this comes about because when we are stressed and upset, it affects our whole being, our whole body. Chronic stress raises the cortisol levels in the body, damages the brain cells, tendons, creates ulcers, and allows disease to develop easily. So we've got to watch out for stress, worry and fearfulness and ruminations and negative thought loops and tensions in our body, and get rid of them. We must not go into this default system all the time. We must try and let it go and keep in the present moment. So we can handle the stress and these sort of thoughts by being mindful, having mindfulness meditation, also being relaxed and playing and relaxed in storytelling with each other. Practicing compassion is found to add 7 years to our lives. That's just being compassionate, kind, understanding. If we're like that, as opposed to being selfish and greedy and trying to get on, we're going to live 7 years longer, more happily. Happiness and good social connections and being calm, just quieting our mind down using breathing meditation, adds 10 years to our life. These have all been found in scientific experiments and assessments. So many things give us stress and unhappiness, frustrations and fears and illness. We've got to control it and let it go. So if we reset our attention on beneficial things, then the brain will change for the better. So we try and get beneficial and happy experiences and give attention to them. And this causes the creation of new synapses or connection between brain cells, and existing cells become more active, and new connections and channels form, and transmission gets better inside the brain. Repeated practice of mindful meditation increases the insular and cortex parts of the brain, allow more critical attention, as well as promoting development of new cells and positive nerve pathways. Practice of choiceless awareness, that's letting go and release of tensions, let in and cultivate love and compassion, all help us in these activities. So we just sit down and watch what's happening. Relax using our breath meditation and just watch, being aware of what's happening in our body, around us, in our thoughts, memories, and what's coming in from our senses of seeing and hearing. Just watching, but not attaching with likes or dislikes. Just being choiceless and just being aware. Just looking and being at peace. Once you grasp onto things and hold on to things, we tend not to want them change. But if you look carefully in life, everything is changing all the time. Our bodies, our feelings, our beliefs, our memories, our thoughts, our dreams, what we are seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching and feeling. Everything is changing. Nothing is constant. But we tend to hang on to them and attach on to them with our likes and dislikes. And this causes problems because we can't hang on to them. So we just practice choiceless awareness, letting go and release that tension. And then we cultivate love and compassion. And this will give us our peace of mind. Just being peaceful, aware and watching, and not attaching with likes and dislikes, and letting go. So a wise person, little by little, fills himself with good. Experience form brain connections, just like the rain flowing down a hill cuts channels in the ground. We can lessen negative connections, increase positive by holding on to a good and kind experience, together with negative one, and then strengthen the positive and let the negative one dissolve and disappear. Just make the positive one stronger together with the negative one, and take over the negative one and let the negative one dissolve and disappear. Smiling is registered faster than any other facial expression. So if we go out, walk with others, we smile. That gives the relationship with them become a good one. They'll smile back and be happier, and the happiness will come to us. Being kind and compassionate ripples out to others and changes our environment. And we're all moved when we see acts of kindness. So we must look after our brain. We should not take in poison that damage it or disrupt its proper functioning. And brain damage comes from smoking, alcohol, and drugs such as marijuana, not sleeping enough, and not being able to breathe properly when you're sleeping. You need 7 to 8 hours of sleep required every day to remove plaques from the brain and keep the brain healthy. And stress kills hippocampal cells in the brain, affecting our memory. So we could look after our brain, not be stressed, have enough sleep, and not take in things that's going to poison it. Heavy cannabis use, that's spark brews of marijuana, and smoking when you're young is linked to premature death. This has just been a new study which was published April this year from the American Journal of Psychiatry. And they found that men aged 18 or 90 years who smoke marijuana are 40% more likely to die by the age of 60 than others who do not smoke. 40% more likely to die before the age of 60. That's a huge amount, a huge increased chance of death before you're 60 if you smoke marijuana heavily when you're young. And death from injury, either accidental or deliberate, are the top causes of death in heavy cannabis users. In other words, when they're under the influence of cannabis, they did stupid things. And about 10% of people who ever use cannabis, and up to half of those who use it daily, will become dependent and continue using it despite experiencing problems. And they become more likely to die early. So understanding and controlling what we think and how our brain works is very important. For what we see as ourselves follow what thoughts we have. With our thoughts, we make our world. What picture we have in our brain, what mental state when we're seeing something, determines how we see that thing. If we're angry and upset and stressed, we'll see it in a certain way. If we're happy and kind and compassionate, we'll see it in a different way. With our thoughts, we make our world. When what we say follows our negative thoughts, stress and unhappiness will follow, similar to a cart following a horse pulling it. In other words, when we take negative thoughts, stress and unhappiness is going to follow us, just as if you were a cart being pulled by a horse. When what we say is positive and beneficial, well-being and happiness will follow you like the shadow follows you. And you cannot move that, take that shadow away. So if you say beneficial and happy things to others, then happiness and well-being will follow, just as if your shadow follows you. With your thoughts, remember always, you make your world. And your future begins with your next thought. Let's make that positive, not negative. And your thoughts create your speech. What you do follows from what you say and think. Your action becomes reactions repeated become your habits. Your habits can strengthen and come stronger and stay for good. So watch your thoughts and how they develop carefully, and let them develop from love and compassion for all beings. Because if you let them develop from negativities, unkindness, hatred, anger, greed, then you'll have problems and happiness following such thoughts. So let them develop from love and compassion for all beings. Our life and our happiness is in our own hands. It depends on the choices we make and how we develop our thought processes and the nerve connections in our brain. So learn how to make positive and beneficial thoughts and connections and avoid all harmful. Think and watch carefully before you allow thoughts to run wild in your brain, or talk, or do something. Stay in the present moment and do not just allow the default network to take over and imagine and ruminate. Their thoughts go round and round in a circle and reinforce themselves. Be mindful of what choices you make and practice mindful breathing and meditation. Relax. Be aware. Be peaceful. Be loving. Be kind.